So another weekend full of controversy and VAR is in the thick of it. Is it time to scrap technology or is it the laws of the game to blame? We are the NNM podcast and this is the Football Talk Show. Welcome back, football fans. This is the NNM podcast and another episode on the Football Talk Show. And as always, I'm joined by the ever-present Mr. Nathan Laverett. How are we doing, Nathan, on this cold, blistery, wet, windy Halloween soon-to-be night?
Well, I'm nice and dry, so I'm okay, mate.
It's all right for some.
Yeah.
So we'll start the show. We've got a couple of new instalments for tonight. We've got the Smash and Pass, which we'll explain later on, and we'll also talk about Nathan's player that he used to look up to as a child, as a neutral. So it wasn't a player that played for Leicester City, which is our hometown club. It was a player that he looked up to as a neutral. So they are the two new instalments that we'll be discussing on the show tonight. But before we go any further, we'll kickstart things with the Friday night game, which was Villa v Leeds. And Leeds obviously got turned up to Villa Park, took a bit of I won't say a bit of a hammering, but they were well under the cosh for the best part of the game. Clearance off the line. The Grealish dubious penalty, which I'm not sure, was it a penalty? What do you think? I know Grealish is renowned for the diving, but I don't know. It looked a bit. It was tight, weren't it? I would have given it personally on the naked eye.
I think it's one of them. I don't think it falls into that grey area that we see with VAR now, where if it is given, you can't see it being overturned. But if it isn't given, you can't see VAR. You just can't see VAR overturning the referee either way, if that makes sense. So if it's given, it won't be overturned. If it's not given, it won't then be given by VAR. I think it falls into that grey area. But Grealish, he's a bit of a. He is a diver. I mean, he's a very technically good footballer. He's a little bastard to play against, but he is a diver. A gust of wind did knock him over. So I think that's right. Maybe his reputation preceded him a bit there. I mean, he's always looking for it, Grealish, always looking to go down, no matter where on the pitch he is. So
yeah, and obviously there was a lot of chances created by Villa early on. There was the clearance off the line that I've just mentioned. Obviously, the Grealish had that chance, and then the penalty that never got given, which again was a little bit dubious as to whether it was or not. There was a Konza chance from the corner, which the Leeds keeper tipped over. So Villa, it wasn't like Villa were not in the game. Villa started strongly and were I wouldn't say on top, but they looked like they were probably going to run out winners in the end. But Leeds just seemed to turn the game completely on its head. And Villa rude not taking the chances and upstep Bamford. Tell me about Bamford, because personally I never ever rated him, but he's proven a lot of people wrong.
Well, as a Leicester fan, obviously we spent a large period of the last since the millennium in the Championship, and that is the case. Well, yeah, we spent a large period of the last millennium in the Championship, and you learn players, you learn about players, and Patrick Bamford was a player who was coming through in the Championship around the time Leicester got promoted on loan from Chelsea. He flirted on a few. I think he went to MK Dons at one point, to Derby. He was around for the last few years in the Championship with those kind of clubs, and he established himself at Middlesbrough into a very good Championship striker. Middlesbrough got promoted, he didn't deliver in the Prem. He came back. He went to obviously went to Leeds, and even in the Championship, they were wasteful. They were looking for a striker in the Championship, and then so God knows when they got promoted, people were thinking, well, if we didn't trust him in the Championship to score his goals, then God help us, we're going to need some reinforcements in the Premier League. And they brought in Rodrigo, but to be fair to Bamford, he seems to have, I don't know what he's done over the summer, but he seems to have hit the ground running. I mean, he had a few tasters early on, which you can say is wasteful, but you could also say he's getting in the right areas, making the right runs. And then when his chance came, well, in the second half, everything he touched sort of flew in.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, you're right. And personally, I look at Bamford, and I've always thought of him as being a little bit of a lightweight. He doesn't look the typical Premier League type of striker, does he? He's not the strongest. He's a little bit soft, goes down too easy. He doesn't feel me. Personally, if I was a Leeds fan and you've just brought Rodrigo in, you'd want to see Rodrigo starting, wouldn't you? Over Bamford. But fair play to Bamford. He's taking his chances. He's when he's getting them, he's taking them. He is a good finisher. You can't take that away from him. I think when he does get chances, 9 times out of 10, he does take them. But yeah, a bit of a shocker, an hat-trick away at Villa. I didn't see it coming at all. As for Villa, Do you expect them to bounce back, or are we going to see the Villa of old now? Is this kind of where they're at? Have they had that little flurry at the start of the season, or
Well, I wouldn't say Villa of old if of old is referring to last season, because I think they are notably a better team than last season. I think they've made 3 or 4 changes to the first team that have had a direct impact, and I think when you do that to any squad, it's going to give them an uplift. They've been fortunate with injuries; they seem to have got away pretty much scot free. Everyone seems to be fit and firing all cylinders. So no, they won't go back to Villa of old in terms of last season, but will they be the Villa? Will Villa have the same form they started this season with? No. I think they're playing Southampton, aren't they, next weekend? And I think would be very well. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Southampton went and did the job on them. I think it was a bit of a reality check for Villa, one they much needed, and I think they're a mid-table team, and I think that's the time for form they will consistently have.
yeah, I agree with you on that one. So moving on to West Ham v Man City, and obviously a game where we expected Man City to go, and they've got a bit of a reputation to go into the London Stadium and sticking 4 or 5 past West Ham. Aguero was back in the starting lineup and claimed to be fit. I think he went off. Was it early in the first half or second half? I think he's got another niggly injury, so it looks like he's back out again. But West Ham seemed to pick another a strong point, and I think they had chances. It was a very even game. I don't think it was complete one way traffic. And obviously Antonio with the overhead kick, and he brought out his inner Wayne Rooney. And yeah, he seems to be on really red hot form at the moment, Antonio. As are West Ham. That's West Ham. That's 8 points from a possible 12, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure they would have taken when they looked at the fixtures. That included Leicester, Wolves, West Ham, and sorry, not West Ham, Man City, and Spurs. Now, on paper, you'd argue that they should have picked up 0 points, but they've come away with 8. So I think they'll be absolutely chuffed to bits with that. But a little bit of controversy leading up to West Ham's goal, a potential handball on, I think it was Soucek.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that?
Well, if it's 2 years ago, then no one even bats an eyelid at it. Obviously, VAR's came in, so now everything is scrutinised, every detail is scrutinised with a tooth comb. And it would have been sad for, it's a great piece of skill by Antonio. He pins, I think it's Eric Garcia, and scores a wonderful overhead kick. And it didn't really affect the goal. City, it would have been a get out of jail free card for City because it really didn't affect the build up to the goal really in any way, shape, or form. So it's one of them. I'm glad it's been. Obviously, I think City fans would have liked it to be disallowed because why wouldn't you want a goal against your team to be disallowed? But it's one of them. If it would have been for them, nowhere on earth would they want it to be disallowed. On what grounds could they disallow that goal? Really, if it's for you, it's one of them. I think in the VAR era, if it goes for you, you're always going to claim for it. But if it goes against you, you're always going to be livid. So it sort of swings and roundabouts in that respect. I'm personally glad it stood. I don't. Yeah, it might have brushed his hand, but I think football's going. We've mentioned this before. It's going so far the other way. I think last season it might have actually been given offside. Offside. I mean handball. Sorry, I think they've changed the rule a little bit for this season. So no, I'm glad it was a goal. I have no issues with it being a goal. If it was against Leicester, I wouldn't be disappointed of the handball. I'd be more disappointed about the defending. To be honest with you, and I think Guardiola should be more worried about the defending things than the potential handball.
Yeah, and obviously speaking of Guardiola, obviously Man City have not really had the start that they would have liked to have had this season. And where Pep, in my opinion, and you know what my opinion is on Pep, I'm not his biggest fan. I personally think he's had a far too easy life to, far too easy start to his footballing management career. Barcelona, Munich, and Man City. Say no more, but they've not really. They look a little bit. I wouldn't fear them. I wouldn't fear them at the moment. I think if any club's coming up against Man City at the moment, I would take the game to them. I don't think you should be worried about them at all. Which completely opens up and it opens up a question as to who is going to run away with the Premier League this year. Because Liverpool don't look like they're going to. When we thought Everton might be that team to kind of cause a shock, they've had a couple of iffy results. Villa were never ever going to be up there. We know that for a fact. United. I really think this season's going to be a strange one. And West Ham now picking up a bit of form. Can they capitalise on the poor performing top sides? Not saying they're going to go and win the Premier League by any shape of the imagination, but I think they've got potential. West Ham, and we've always said that man for man and on paper that they've got a good side. But at least, can Moyes get the best out of him? I'm not a big advocate of Moyes at all. But, you can't knock him. 8 points out of a possible 12. And the sides that they've played, they are starting to look a very good side, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I think after the first 2 games of the season, they lost them both. I think it was Newcastle at home and Arsenal away. And then you look at your next 4 games, and I don't think, like you mentioned, any West Ham fans would have been looking at that thinking they're going to get anything at all. Wolves, Leicester, Tottenham, and Manchester City, they'd have been fearing the worst. They'd have thought they'd be going 6 games in without picking up a point.
Yeah.
But no, they seem to they have a very nice balance to them. They always look dangerous when they go forward. They defend very well as a unit. Like I said, I don't. You asked who's going to run away with the Premier League. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it. I think it's going to be quite a competitive, close season, which will be good for the neutral and probably good for teams like Leicester, Wolves, because we're not going to be blown out the water. Teams like that are going to be in touching distance, and have something to play for right to the very end. I think at the bottom of the league, I think certain teams will get cut off. I think become quite apparent relatively soon the teams are going to go down. I think that will happen. So I think there is a bit of a gap in ability between the worst sides and the better sides in the Premier League. So I think the bottom 3, I don't think there'll be too much drama in terms of relegation this season. But I think all the drama will be at the top end of the table. Top 6, top 4. Who would you put your money on? I mean, it's very easy to say Liverpool, but no Van Dijk all season. Like I said, you said you don't fear City. I don't really fear Liverpool. You want to get you think you get at them because they're there to be got at, and that's the case with City. That's the case with Chelsea. That's the case with United. I think for me, right now, the team I'd probably say is my outsider to the league is probably Spurs.
Yeah, you might be onto something there. Yeah, Spurs. Mourinho, he's got that pedigree, hasn't he? The only thing with Spurs is they just there's that term, isn't there?
Spursy.
Spursy.
Yeah.
And I know it's a long-standing joke, and many fans seem to get a bit of a kick out of using that term, as do we. But they're always capable of cocking up, aren't they, Spurs? And I think you look at the West Ham game being the prime example. You're 3-0 up and you're absolutely cruising, but then you end up taking a point from it. And it's them sort of games that will stop you from winning the Premier League, because them games when you should be winning and you should be coming over 3 points, that point that you've just picked up, losing them 2 points, that could be important come the end of the season. So I don't know. It's just a real strange season so far, and I don't know what to put it down to. I don't know whether it's a lack of fans in the ground, whether it's, like you say, lack of focus. The games have got a little bit of a glorified type of friendly feel to them. I can't put me. It's great for the neutral. Don't get me wrong. It is fantastic for the neutral, but yeah, it's a real strange one. Just before we move on from the West Ham Man City game, I just want to give a quick mention to Fabianski. I thought he pulled out some fantastic saves, and he is renowned for his shot stopping, Fabianski, and I don't think he kind of gets the credit that he deserves sometimes. But from what I've seen, so he pulled off some cracking saves, 2 from Mahrez, I believe, one at his near post and one from range, and I think Sterling went in on one-on-one and he came out, made himself big. So, he kind of, I wouldn't say kept West Ham in the game because they had their own chances, but yeah, I think a very underrated keeper.
Go back 10 years, I think 10 years, he was at Arsenal, wasn't he, as a youngster, and he had the nickname Flapiansky, if you remember.
Yeah.
But then, to be fair, you could have easily put him in the same category as the likes of Nicholas Bentner, of players who have gone to Arsenal with this promise, Vito Manone, and not kicked on. But he went away. I think he went to Swansea, and he did really well at Swansea. He's on to West Ham. He's actually built a very good career for himself, and he's now a top 6, top 7 best keepers in the Premier League, most consistent. I mean, how often do you hear the term Fabianski mistake in the last 5-6 years in the Premier League? You don't.
No, you
Not at all. He's a very solid keeper. Very good business by West Ham when they bought him in. Not the most inspiring signing on paper, but a very solid keeper.
Absolutely. We'll move away from the Premier League for a short while, and a question that I've always, I wouldn't say I've always wanted to ask, but a question that I'm always interested in hearing the answer is, what sort of player or what player did you, I would say not necessarily look up to as a child, but a player that when you're playing that, that when you're playing the six-a-side around the green or your local green and you're in on goal, and there's always that one player that you scream his name before you stick the ball into the old dear's back garden. Who was that player for you? Obviously, for us, the 90s era was kind of our childhood. Who was that player as a neutral? Because obviously, we could quite easily pick a Leicester player. But as a neutral, who was that player that you kind of, he always seemed to stand out for you? It was always in your head, so to speak.
When you asked me this question, I really had to think about it, and I thought, what players, made an impact on me instantly when I first saw them. And you said we're 90s children. I was 97, so I don't really remember too much about the 90s. I mean, my first real memory of being, involved and watching players, and being able to like judge how well a team or a player is playing was probably the 2006 World Cup. At the time, I was 9. I can remember stuff from before then, but I think that's the time that in my head sticks out. The first time I really watched someone and really could like rate individual players and was aware of every single player on the pitch and aware of who was good, who was not so good. And there was a curly-haired Canadian kid I'd never heard of before because he played for Bayern Munich called Owen Hargreaves. And now, as I said, you're a bit older than me, and you did point out the fact he was actually in the 2002 World Cup squad for England, Owen Hargreaves. But as I said, at that time I was only 4 years old, so I have no recollection of that. To be fair, um, but no, and obviously all the players who play for England were notoriously all in the Premier League, and to this day, 99% of the players who play for England play in the Premier League. We're not one of those nations who have players, scattered all over the place. So when this curly-haired Canadian fella rocked up and started bossing the midfield, it did sort of take me back a bit. And for a few years after that, I was always a massive advocate of Owen Hargreaves. Also, I think injuries curtailed his career. He got ravaged by injuries, and of course, he went to Manchester United, and he had a few good years there. But as I said, the injuries caught up with him. He went to City, never really got going. So yeah, I'd say Owen Hargreaves, and then from a personal point of view as well, my mum is Canadian, and obviously him being Canadian born, I sort of had that sort of a little bit of affiliation with him, I guess you could say. So I always wanted him to do well. So quite a strange answer. I guess there weren't too many people running around the garden shouting Owen Hargreaves. I mean, I wouldn't say I was doing that. I wouldn't say, but what I would say is when I saw that 2006 World Cup, I didn't have a clue who he was, and he he did make me stand up and take notice because he was our best player in that World Cup.
Yeah, no, I was. Yeah, again, I was kind of in the same boat as you. You don't, because of the age that we weren't very familiar with players that played overseas, and it was a little bit. You didn't tend to it. I don't think because nowadays you've got social media and internet and stuff like that, and it's very easy to access highlights and
Mm-hmm.
and stats and statistics and stuff on players overseas. You can real take an interest in the likes of, I'm just plucking this one out of the air. Dybala of Juventus, or you know. Trying to think some others, maybe Luka Modric at Real Madrid and so others. You didn't get that in our day. There wasn't that form of technology. So players like that played overseas, you didn't hear a lot of them
No.
unless you was watching the Champions League on ITV, of course. So yeah, when a player like that comes into the England setup and you've never really seen him play and you don't really hear a lot of him, yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, but no, solid player, very good player. I think he played right back a few times
Mm-hmm.
for the national side as well. So, but yeah, no, I always liked him. I think, like I say, his injuries were a bit cruel to him towards the end, but always reliable, very solid. But yeah, it was a bit of a blast from the past, that one. If I was asked that question, and I've always been fond of strikers throughout my whole, even throughout growing up, any player that has come to Leicester, and they've been a goal scorer, they've always been a favourite of mine. Stemming back to the likes of Matty Fry, Ian Hume, back in the days of when even Emil Eski was banging the goals in. I've always been a fan favourite of the strikers, and as a neutral, one that kind of always used to stay in my mind, or stick in my mind. And if I was, if you was ever kind of playing, if you was ever around the green and it was who you're going to play against, it was, Man United's and Arsenal's as well. But mine was Andy Cole. And I don't know why, and I can honestly not give a kind of an in-depth explanation. But for some reason, I just loved Andy Cole. I just thought he was fantastic for his work rate. He always looked busy, didn't he? And he was a cracking goal scorer. And again, he was another England international. But yeah, as a neutral, Andy Cole was kind of my player that I tended, I wouldn't say look up to, but he was that type of player that, if you was ever trying to mimic someone, he was kind of the man. So yeah, like I say, that was the question that I wanted to ask, and we've got an answer, a rare one, shall we say? No, I wasn't. Well, I'll say I wasn't expecting Owen Hargreaves at all. But going back to the Premier League, then Fulham v Palace, and Palace came out on top on the Derby day, shall we say, or a London derby. Not that it got much of a reputation. And Zaha seemed to be instrumental in that. I'm not his biggest fan, I must admit. I don't think he's as good as what people tend to make out. He's nowhere near worth 60 odd million, like Roy says. But on his day, he can cause you problems, and popped up with a goal and an assist. But Fulham just seemed to look a bit lacklustre again, didn't they?
I think they're a bit too old, a bit too wise in the Premier League. Crystal Palace, whenever they come against Fulham, they always seem just to do a job on them. You mentioned Wilf Zaha. On his day, he can be unplayable. His days have been very few and far between in the past. But to be fair, start of this season, I don't know what his goals to game is, but he's actually done really well. And a lot of
Mm.
people often criticise him, during the transfer window. Was he fully committed to Palace? Was he trying to put himself in the shop window, etc., etc.? But you can't fault his commitment this season so far. He's been superb. He was unplayable. Like I said, Hodgson, wily old fox, Palace, been in the Premier League for 8, 9 years now. They know what they're doing. They know their way around 90 minutes, especially against a newly promoted team who are, low on confidence, looking for those first points. And I think they just did a job on them.
Yeah, he did. And the Kamara red card, I've seen that back quite a few times. I think it's harsh. I think it's really harsh. I think it's just a lazy challenge, if anything. I don't think there's any intent there to really hurt the player. I don't think it's necessarily dangerous.
Well,
There's no,
lazy, you can class lazy as reckless in a way. So if you're going in lazy with your studs, that can be quite reckless. That's what they'll say. I mean, it's one of them. It's one of them. Obviously, but the referee at the time, he's given the booking, hasn't he? And he's gone to VAR and they've told him to have a look at the screen and he's turned it to a red. I think any time it's the studs like that, studs up, coming down, I think you're always in trouble, regardless really of the force.
yeah, I don't. Personally, for me, I don't think there was enough force there to him to cause any damage. I think it was a booking and nothing more. I've seen hell of a lot worse where players have come away with bookings. And I think VAR, it's there. We keep going on about VAR, don't we? And it always seems to be a hot topic, and you can't help but talk about it because it seems to constantly be causing controversy every single week, but for all the wrong reasons. And I don't know. I think the ref's gone over and had a look, and I think the refs he's seen enough to know that it's a booking. I don't know why he's had to go over and change his mind. I just don't think it. I don't think he's reckless at all. He's not gone in 2 feet. He's not off the ground. There's no kind of. I don't think there's any sort of force there to cause the player any injury. It's purely just a lazy leg, and he's just caught the player. Okay, his studs are up, but there's no force there for me to cause any real injury to the player. And I think the problem is now is red cards are given far too easy, and I think that challenge there is a prime example of it. Yes, letter of the law maybe his studs are up, but sometimes you've got to use a bit of common sense, haven't you? You can just tell by his body language he's not gone in with any intent to hurt the player or a dangerous tackle.
Oh no, no, not at all. It's like I say, it's one of them. It's red cards are becoming more prevalent in football. Obviously, the referee's natural instinct when he first saw it first time was a yellow card. VAR told him to have a look at it, which basically infers that he's made the wrong decision. That's basically what it means. But VAR told the referee to go to the monitor. It's very rare he then sticks with his initial decision. Very rare.
Yeah.
So it's one of them. I think you're going to see. You might not like it, North, but I think you're going to see a lot of them for a lot. It's going to get worse and worse. I think you'll be pulling your hair out in a few years' time with some of the stuff people are getting sent off for, because I think that is just a standard red card nowadays.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't agree with it at all. I'm a fan that I like a good challenge. I like a good fair challenge. I like a hard challenge. Football's going. I wouldn't say it's going soft. I think that's the wrong term to use. I think it is going. It's going in the wrong way. There's far too many bookings and red cards dished out now for challenges that are a little bit late, maybe. And I know they've got to look after the players, and you don't want players getting injured. And there's been some horrific injuries over the last few seasons. Um, but at the same time, you've got to use common sense, haven't you? And the one for me, I think that always sticks in my mind, and you see it all the time. And it was years and years ago. I think it was a cup final between Wimbledon. It could have been Wimbledon and Spurs. I think it was Vinnie Jones and Gaza. And I think it's the first 5 minutes. It's one of the worst tackles I've ever seen in my life. In this day and age, you'd get a red card and probably a 5-game ban on top of that. But the ref just got. There's no booking. There's no red. The ref just has a word from both. They shake hands and they get on with it. And I just think that that's what football lacks. It's a contact sport. You hear it's a contact sport. There's far too many that slight tap and they're on the deck and they're rolling round and they're playing up to the ref, and it gets embarrassing. To be
Well,
honest with you.
even I think it's just a culture change in the game. I'm thinking back to even when I was a kid, and I'm sure it was the same for you. I'm going back 10. How old am I? Yeah, 10 years when I was playing Sunday League football, just as you do. The manager would say, early on to your defenders, your midfielders, it's a murder. This is in kids' football. Let them know they're in the
Yeah,
game. It's like a psychological thing as much as anything. It's part of the game. It's part of the psychology of it. let them know you're up for it. Hit them early, go in and not hurt them, but just let them know you're there. Not break the leg, just leave one on them. Just. But I think that was like a psychological thing as much as anything. It shows your intent. It shows you're not going to be bullied. You're not going to be intimidated. And I think, obviously that side of things has gone out of the game. And this is kids football, by the way. I can count numerous times. I'm sure you can as well. The amount of times as a kid, your manager would say to you, "Early doors, hit them early."
Yeah, oh mate, it was a common theme, weren't it?
Yeah.
Every morning you'd be sat there in the changing rooms, and it was one of the key phrases that every manager used. Get in the faces, hit them early, let them know they're in a game. But I don't know. I just think it's gone the wrong way, and there's a couple of challenges that I can kind of the pluck out of the air. I think one being Johnny Evans on Harry Kane last year. Fantastic challenge. Wins the ball, but absolutely smashes Kane and sends him up in the air. But the ref doesn't give a foul, obviously, because it's a clean check. But they're the type of tackles you want to see. And I remember the stadium being up on the feet.
It was like a goal. Yeah, it was
Yes.
like it's very tribal football. And if you see one of your players absolutely annihilate an opposition player, I mean, we see it a lot with Jamie Vardy charging players down and absolutely crunching them. It gets you going. It's the equivalent of, not necessarily scoring a goal, but it can change the whole mood of the game. It really can. And if referees are going to sanitise football down to the point where it's barely any contact, I think it riles. I think I always talk about Leicester and Jamie Vardy sets the tone from the front, presses from the front. He embodies everything we do. I'm convinced down the years, the amount of times we've been in a bit of a lull as a team and then Vardy's gone and laid someone out and the old team gets up for it. The amount of times that must have happened. Because he hits someone, the crowd go up, the players get up for it. Back in the day, Danny Drinkwater then would puff his cheeks out and get ready for war. And those sort of days are gone.
Yeah, but they're the sort of games, and like I said, they're the sort of challenges that you love to see it. You don't
want to see players get injured, but you like to see commitment. You don't want to see players get. No one's saying we want to see players get stretched off every game. Of course we don't. We just want to see a bit of robustness, a bit of hustle and bustle. The Vinnie Joneses. There's no Vinnie Joneses today, are there? There's no rough asses. There's no shit asses. I mean, maybe in the Premier League they've been gone for a while, shit houses. But I mentioned before, we grew up watching a lot of Championship football. I'm thinking Michael Brown. I'm thinking some of the boys at Millwall. There's some players there, they're dirty bastards. Even they were. You think, fucking hell, Nicky Bailey. I think was you went into games thinking, he's a dirty bastard, him, and you knew it. You knew for well. What's it? Chris Morgan, who did Ian Hume with the elbow. You used to know, 10 years, 15 years ago, there weren't no centre halves in the Premier League, but they were still knocking about in the Football League. Chris Morgan, dirty bastard. On the pitch. I'm sure he's a lovely bloke off it, but when that crossed that white line, Neil Warnock was in his ear. Morgs, hit him early. And he did. 9 times out of 10, Morgan hit him early. And it's not because he's obviously a bad bloke off the pitch, but it was just the way he played. It's almost like a role in football that's became redundant.
Yeah. I think we could go on and on about this topic, couldn't we, for a long time? And I think centre halves, especially, they're not centre halves anymore, are they? They're very rare. The Johnny Evans of these worlds, and I think he's a perfect example. I know we're saying that because we're Leicester fans, but he is a cracking centre half. Committed in the challenge, an old school centre half. No messing around. Doesn't want to do anything fancy. Just win his tackles, win his headers, get the ball, and get someone that can create something. There's not many of them around now.
What centre half? Obviously, excluding Virgil van Dijk. Take Virgil van Dijk out of the equation. What centre half would you have instead of Johnny Evans? Would you trust as much as Johnny Evans?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who, any other club in the league, who would you say, hands down yard swapping for Johnny Evans now, because he will make us notably more, he'll improve us from the word go, and they'll be as consistent as Johnny Evans?
Do you know what? The two that pop straight in my mind, and I think it's purely because of the very similar, and it's either Connor Cody or Willy Bolly.
Don't trust him. Can't be trusted to play in a two. We play in a two a lot of the time. If we move to a three, maybe, but don't get me wrong, I love Connor Cody. I think he's on the pitch, his story on the pitch, obviously moving on from Liverpool and forging a career at Huddersfield, Sheffield United and Wolves. Obviously, you hear him in interviews, he lights up a room. But I wouldn't swap him for Johnny.
No. Well, no, definitely not. If I've got a swap, not a chance.
My point is, there's not many, is there?
I think
that's how good Evans is.
Yeah, I think if we were in an injury crisis and Evans was injured and you wanted someone like for like, those two would be the two that I think could fit in and do a similar job. I look at the top sides, and I think the top sides get away with being defensively poor these days.
They're garbage.
Because of how because of how good the players are in front of them. Do you know what I
Look
mean?
at Vards. Look what Vards has done to the top six in the past 5, 6 years. He rips them to shreds.
Yeah,
I
yeah, he
mean,
does.
they're not defensively. They're not good. I mean, Manchester City every year they're pumping money into the back four or back five to try and plug holes. They're not
Mm.
good defensively. And going on Johnny Evans, I think it probably plays testament to how good Rio and Vidic were at United. That I think Johnny
Oh,
Evans for the longest time was viewed almost as a second mark centre half. When in fact I'd go as he's world class.
yeah, it's
I
fantastic.
think he's world class, and yet Vidic and Ferdinand, you couldn't get a sniff. Maybe he's improved with age. I'm sure he hasn't got a lot more experience, but he was nowhere near when Vidic and Ferdinand were there. They were the head and shoulders the two. But I think testament to how good they were. But Johnny Evans, absolutely superb. How we got him
Again,
for 3 million, absolute steal.
I think that just proves our point even more. You don't get centre. I think that era we were kind of blessed. You towards the end of the career, you had your Martin Keown, your Sol Campbells, John Terry's, Ferdinand's, Vidic,
Cavallio,
y-
yeah.
Carvalho. Defenders that were there to defend. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's the training. I don't know whether it's
I
the
think it's
systems.
the whole back unit now. I think you're talking about centre halves here. I saw an interesting piece of analysis on Manchester. It was with Rio Ferdinand, and he was with for BT Sport talking to Trent and Robertson, obviously of Liverpool, the two fullbacks. Defensively, neither of them the greatest, and I think that's well noted. Neither of them are the greatest defensively, yet they're considered the best fullbacks potentially in the world, certainly in the Premier League, aren't they?
Mm.
Trent and Robertson, and he did a comparison, and it was Neville and Evra at United and the Ferguson, and Robertson and Trent, and it showed the amount of goal involvements and assists they had. And I think Neville and Patrice Evra had three between them in the season, or three each in a season, compared with Trent and uh, Robertson, who had like 16 each, 15, 16 each. But defensively, Gary Neville and Patrice Evra were world class.
Yeah, exactly.
No one got around them, no one beat them. As a defensive unit, they were a lot more solid. I think the days of, and everyone says now the modern day football's got to get up and down. I think for the best teams. That's came at the detriment a bit of their defensive solidity, because those back fours, like you said, United, Evra, Neville, Vidic, Ferdinand. What they were defenders who defended first and foremost.
I think it's across the old back four.
That's
Even
it.
the
Yeah,
centre
the
halves.
culture. The culture is shifted.
The centre halves are now expected to be very good on the ball. You look at the days, like I say, Ferdinand. He was okay on the ball, but you compare him to Maguire, and Maguire is very good on the
John
ball.
Stones.
There's no
Yeah,
John Stone. There's no doubt about it. But defensively, Rio
hands.
Ferdinand was absolutely fantastic, as was John Terry.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a great topic to talk about. And we could probably go in
I
more
think
in
we'll end
depth.
it. We'll end it on one final note. We're on about defenders playing out from the back. Probably
Mm.
one of the best centre half partnerships in the Premier League has to go down as Wes Morgan and Robert Hoof. The two blokes couldn't do two kick ups between them. It was head and kick it FC, and they were superb with it. Bodies on the line, win your battles, and they did that for a season, and we won the league. So ball playing centre half's all fine and fancy, but sometimes it's good just to have a bit of head and kick in there.
Yeah, well, you're there to do a job, and they were there to defend, and the system we played, it worked an absolute treat.
It did.
But moving on to United and Chelsea, obviously the drab 0-0 of the weekend, which we all expected to be a little bit more open, shall we say? But I think United were a little bit worried that they were going to probably get trounced for 6 again. Chelsea, on the other hand, they just didn't seem to ever get going, did they? Apart that decision where obviously Maguire's pretty much hugging Aspilicueta. There's no social distancing going on there. How that is not a penalty?
I believe,
VAR again.
yeah, I believe that's what they call in the WWE universe is a DDT. I believe that's what it's referred to. No, it was a ludicrous decision. I mean, it's one of them people are on about called Manchester United, obviously Penchester United and Bruno Fernandes, because they seem to get a penalty every game. You can guarantee. I don't know what it is, but you just feel like Man United would have got that. I know even against Chelsea, you still feel like United would have got that decision, and rightly so. They should have got it. It was a poor decision. Maguire's really I don't know what's going on with Harry Maguire at the moment, but it's certainly on the pitch. His form isn't just whatever going on in his personal life is obviously personal to him, but we can only really judge him by what goes on the pitch. And on the pitch at the moment, he seems to be 6 and 7s.
Yeah, not good at all. And I wasn't watching the game live. I watched the highlights,
You
but
didn't miss anything.
No, I'm sure I didn't. But I've seen a lot of comments on social media about the decision, and when I've seen it, I'm thinking, well, from corners sometimes everyone's got an opinion, haven't they? Whether it's just a good tussle or whether it's a fair challenge or whether it's a bit off of one and six of the other type thing. But this was horrific, wasn't he? He's all over Aspilicueta. Aspilicueta can't move. He can't get. Harry Maguire is basically bear hugging him and throwing him to the ground. VAR have looked at it, and how VAR have looked at that and gone, no, it's not. It's just, I'm sorry, but VAR, it gets a lot of unwanted stick, because a lot of the time it's confirming the laws of the game, isn't it? And that's fair. But with decisions like that, I'm sorry, who is sitting there and making that decision and saying no, that's not a penalty? Because
did they look at it for a penalty, or did they? I don't know if they've even
they looked at they looked at it. Yeah.
It's like let's say you blame VAR. It's like if someone says, I don't know, that's a spade's a spade. Are you mad at the person who said it's a spade? Because it is a spade. You know what I'm saying? You can't be mad at if I say, oh, that's a spade. You go, oh, I don't want a fucking spade. Well, I don't know. I'm just telling you what it is. You don't like the actual spade. So that's what it is with football, with VAR. You don't like the rules, but the VAR just relaying the rules.
Yeah.
We're in recent weeks, we've seen a few subjective issues, obviously with the Pickford Van Dijk one, where the person monitoring VAR didn't take further action because it wasn't the incident that they were primarily looking at the time, looking at offside, weren't they? In that incident, and obviously that's what all they were looking at. They didn't have the foresight they didn't feel the need then to challenge the tackle by Pickford on Van Dijk. So I think officials have been hiding behind VAR a lot, and now I think actually it's coming out that the officials have still they can't just sit there with a fucking packet of Butterkist and fucking watch the game sucking toffee popcorn. They've actually got to pay attention to it, because they actually have got to make some subjective decisions, and that was an absolute clanger. Absolute clanger. I thought VAR was supposed to eradicate those kind of things. So.
Well, you'd like to think so. But as for the game itself, obviously United have some good chances. Rashford missed a 1-on-1. He had a cracking chance on the turn, which Mendy made a cracking save, and Mata had a good chance. There was a couple of others. So I think United were probably the better of the two sides overall. But apart from Mendy's early scare where he nearly passed it into his own goal, I thought he looked safe between the sticks. I thought steady hands, and I think Kepa's got to be looking on and thinking to himself, I think I'm out the door here, because this Mendy's coming in and looking steady. You've only got to look steady, haven't you, compared to Kepa? I think I could go in goal and look steady compared to him. He's just, but yeah, like I say, bit of a drab game. There wasn't really much else to it, but I'm not sure where United or Chelsea are going to finish this year, to be honest with you. Chelsea, they've spent a lot of money. And I know we've spoken about this before. They've spent a lot of money. I think it's going to take time for them to bed in and again understanding of each other and the system that Frank wants to play. I think the jury's still out on Frank. It's still early into his managerial career to kind of say whether he is or not a good manager. As for Ole, obviously, he's getting a lot of unwarranted stick at the moment, maybe about Van der Beek. I think why have they signed him? I can't understand it.
I ain't got a clue. I've not got. I mean, if they were offering 80 million for Sancho and Dortmund wanted 120, and they're going out and spending 40 on Van der Beek, why not just put that money towards? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm not Edward Wood. I'm not part of Manchester United's recruitment policy, but Van der Beek's too good to be sitting on a bench. And you think for him, this is a Euro summer. He needs to be playing football. He needs to be getting first team football. And I like Donny Van der Beek. I think he was superb at Ajax. And is he ever going to dislodge Fernandes? No. So. Yeah, it's one of them. It's a strange signing. It doesn't seem to fit very well. Not pre-Fernandes, it made sense, but now they've got Fernandes. To me, it doesn't make sense.
No, it's a strange one. Again, we're going to move away from the Premier League and introduce to you our first new game show as such to the podcast or the football talk show, shall I say? And the title for this is Smash or Pass, and it's not the explicit version that some of you may have maybe getting excited about. The rules are pretty simple. I will be asking Nathan whether he would smash, which is in brackets, take a shot on himself, or pass, which is to pass the ball to one of these 5 players that I'm going to call out. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's purely opinion, a bit of fun. And you can join in with this by all means. Join in by posting in the comments below whether you would smash or pass. And we're going to call out the 5 players. And to start it off with, we've got Matthias Kesman. Smash or pass?
That was a good question. Very remember him at Chelsea, of course. He was 2004 era, and then went on to Atletico Madrid. Obviously, got pedigree. Scored lots of goals at Partizan Belgrade, at PSV Eindhoven. I don't really know. He's sort of one of those players who sort of looked on the fringes, didn't he? Of certainly in 04, 05, one of the obviously Abramovich's money was still quite new at the time. Chelsea was still splashing the cash. Not that they ever stopped, but yeah, he sort of came and he thought this kid could potentially be like a European superstar. Never really happened for him, did it?
No.
So it depends. Are you asking me if he's a good striker? Yes. He seems to be a bit of a flat track bully. I mean, he goes to Holland, he scores loads of goals. He goes to Serbia and scores lots of goals. But he can't really cut it. He gets to a certain level and he can't really cut it. So I'm passing. I think he ended his career in South China as well. He ended on a cushy little paycheck, so he hasn't got time to be playing football with me. So I'm passing it. No, I'm not. I'm smashing it. I'm smashing it. I'm not passing it to Matthias. Fuck off. I'm smashing it.
So the 2v2 situation.
Yeah.
It's you two against, let's say, 2 of the worst centre halves in the league, and you're going for smash. You're taking the shot on yourself.
Yeah.
You give him the 2 fingers to
I'm saying, Matthias, go, and then I'm dropping the shoulder and it's on myself.
Right, okay. So up next, it's the Liverpool legend David Ngog.
Oh.
Are you smashing or passing?
Well, this one probably not even as difficult as the first one. David Ngog, came through at PSG. Bit of a wonder kid. Built like a spider. Very tall, very rangy. Nothing but legs and a small head. That's what he was. He was. He came from PSG, went to Liverpool, flattered to the sea. I think it shows how far Liverpool have come in the past 10 years now. You can think David Ngog was getting regular football for them. Went to Bolton once and proved there he could not cut it in the Premier League. Even went to Swansea for a bit, went off to France, got a 1-in-4 ratio in France, ended up at Ross County for a time, I remember. I mean, if I can't pass to Matthias Kesman, who's got like 50 caps for his country, how am I passing to David Ngog?
So you smashing?
Oh, definitely am. Then David Ngog. I'm not passing anything to David Ngog.
Oh, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Oh, I'm enjoying this already. And another Liverpool legend, Milan Baros. Smash or pass?
All right, now I feel like it's very easy to throw the book at Milan Baros because he didn't have a great goal-scoring record in his domestic career. I don't think he was never renowned for being an out-and-out goal scorer. Certainly at Liverpool, his record wasn't the greatest, and other places he went. But for Czech Republic, very, very hot. Very, very hot on the press for Czech Republic. Always could be counted on for the national team. 93 caps, 41 goals. Very talented striker. And Galatasaray as well. So once again, I think he's the same sort of player. He could compete at a high level, but he got found out the higher he went. He goes to Turkey, he turns into a bit of a superstar. I like Milan Baros. When I was growing up, 2003, 2005, he was one of the first Premier League strikers I remember with his long hair. So yeah, I don't mind Milan Baros. I'll pass it to Milan.
So Milan's in on goal and
only for Czech Republic though, not for Galatasaray. Yeah, not. He struggled for goals really. He went to obviously Villa, Liverpool, Portsmouth, but at Galatasaray had a very good record and was very, very dependable for his country. One of those players, you see a lot with the German players like Klose and Podolski. Used to be famous for it, not doing too much domestically, but then they pulled on the white shirt for Germany and turned into absolute beasts. And I think that was similar to Milan Baros, always dangerous in a Czech Republic shirt. So I'm going to pass it to Milan.
Yeah, he always looked a bit awkward when he ran into Milan Baros. Always looked like he needed to nip to the loo or something. But anyway, moving on, and it's the modern day footballer. It's the Man City second striker, shall we say? He's probably not second striker at the moment because they ain't even got one. Gabriel Jesus, smash or pass?
Oh, yeah, I've got to pass it to Jesus. I think Jesus is a very good footballer. I mean, he plays in a good Manchester City team. I think anything in the 18-yard box, he's very dangerous. Is he Aguero level? No. But is that really a diss? No, not really, because Aguero is a world-class striker. And I think he will be a world-class striker. He's got a good record for Brazil, almost 1-2 for City. He's still only 23 years of age. So, it's hard to throw the book at him, really. I can't really lump him in the same category as David Ngog. when he's had far more of an impact on the Premier League than poor old David had. So I'm going to keep up the theme. So I'm going to pass it to I'd pass it to Gabriel Jesus. I do rate him.
So far we've got 2 smashes and 2 passes. So rounding it off, sorry, for this week's smash or pass, we've got Southampton legend and Brendan Rodgers legend, shall we say as well, as his big money signing, the replacement for Luis Suarez, the big Ricky Lambert, smash or pass.
Oh, I've got to pass to Ricky. Maybe cross it. Big lad. Got a good head on him. No, as a Leicester fan, many people think Leicester were established in 2016, I think. And we didn't really have much of a history before then, but we did have a history before then. We did have a fan base before then, a much smaller one. And take your mind back 12 years ago, 2008 season, we are languishing in League One with Chris Powell playing at fullback. So, that's where we used to be. And during our time in League One, there weren't too many quality players about. I think Simon Cox was a good young player around. Fabian Delph was at Leeds. Beckford at Leeds. Obviously, we had Matty Fry at Leicester. But there was a big lump at Bristol Rovers who was causing a bit of havoc, causing a bit of a stir, and that was big Ricky Lambert. So it's for us to see him from Bristol Rovers and to go to Southampton and take them from League One to the Premier League, and have a more than a 1-2 ratio for Southampton. He got his big money move to, well, big money. I wouldn't say big money, but he got his opportunity to play for Liverpool, which was his boyhood club, and he took it. Yeah, it sort of flattered to deceive. It didn't really suit the way they played. But I'm passing it to Ricky Lambert. Where he came from, obviously starting off at Blackpool, Mansfield, Stockport, Rochdale, Bristol Rovers, then Southampton, and then that meteoric rise with Southampton, very similar to like Grant Holt at Norwich sort of rise. Got himself in the England squad, scored for England with his first touch, I think, against Scotland, a header from a corner.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I'm backing Ricky Lambert. I'm passing to Ricky Lambert.
Yeah, no, good choice. I'd pass to Ricky Lambert all day long. Could finish. Could definitely finish.
Definitely.
Probably didn't seem to get up to the greatest of stars of Liverpool, but I think that was one of the craziest signings we'll ever see in modern day football. Thanks to our current manager, Mr. Brendan Rodgers. Let's hope you don't make too many clangers like that at our place. Moving back to the Premier League and the Merseyside club Liverpool at home to Sheffield United, and two penalty shouts for Sheffield. One that they got, which I thought was a very poor call. I think the rules state that if he's on the line, it is classed as inside the area.
Yeah.
It's tight, isn't it? It's very tight.
It's a strange one because that's almost like saying if the ball's on the line, it's classed as a goal. So it's like on the goal line. So it's kind of an inconsistency in the laws there. I think it's one of them. It looks soft, but it's one of them. If it's on the halfway line, it's given as a free kick. And in theory, a foul's a foul regardless of where you're on the pitch. But it always looks softer when it's for a penalty, doesn't it? Just because of what the reward is. If that makes sense. It was soft. But was it a penalty? If having given the free kick, yes, it's a penalty. But was it soft? It was soft. If Mike Dean knew it was a penalty, would he have given it? If, say, it's 3 yards further forward and it's definitely in the box. Everyone can see it. I don't know if Mike Dean gives it. It looks quite soft. But because it's on the line, I think Mike Dean thinks he's given a free kick, and then it turns out it's a penalty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I must admit, it looks a foul.
Yeah, it is a foul, but there's a difference between a foul and a penalty. We always hear them, don't you? If it was elsewhere on the pitch, if it's on the halfway line, he'd give it, but if it's in the area, they don't. I think it falls into that category, perhaps. But no, I personally wasn't. I don't think it was the worst decision you'll ever see in the world. So didn't lose much sleep over it.
No, I don't think many will. The second call, which they didn't get, I think was it Berger? Berg? I'm not sure. I'm sure it's Berger. Sanderberg, that's the one. Berger. I don't know where Berger's come from. He gets tripped in the box. I think it's by Jota. I think it was. That was soft, but letter of the law, if he's tripped up, it's a penalty. So. I think they're a little bit hard done by Sheffield. They get one, which they're probably a little bit lucky to get. I would have probably said that's more of a free kick than a penalty personally myself, just where it was on the pitch. But the second one, I think I've seen them given. But as for Liverpool's performance, obviously getting the job done. I think that's what good sides do. We always say, don't they? That's what champions do. They manage to grind out results, and that's what Liverpool did. But Jota getting another goal, a very good goal as well. He don't score many with his head.
No.
Do you think he's going to play a key role for Liverpool this year? Because everyone thought he was going to kind of be a little bit of how'd you put it, an understudy to the front three. I think he'll play more of an important role. I think we'll see more of him than what people think.
Well, I believe he started in the midfield three, didn't he, against Sheffield United? He was part of that midfield three contingent. I think the top three, Firmino, Salah, and Mane, were all on show. And I believe when I was watching Match of the Day, the lineup they did, he was actually in the midfield. I like Jota. I mean, we first saw him in 2016 playing for Porto before he came to English football with Leeds against Leicester in the Champions League. He was always very nippy, very lively, very quick, very clever, very fast in the mark, like very things, he's very snappy on the brain. He gets the ball, knows what he's going to do with it. I don't know how big his impact will be for Liverpool, if I'm completely honest. But what I will say is, if he needed a confidence boost, that is a big goal. I mean, it's all right coming off the bench and scoring the fourth when you're already 3-0 up, which is what the likes of like Minamino would do or someone like that. But to get a goal like that in a tough, dogged game, that'll do his confidence the world of good. So, yeah, I like him. I rate him. He's a decent piece of business.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take him. I'll take him at Leicester any day of the week.
Yeah.
Obviously, as for Sheffield United, it's another poor result for them. They still, I don't think they're yet to win a game, aren't they, in the Premier League? And they just, I don't know, they don't seem to look like that Sheffield United that they were last season. I know some people refer to kind of the second season syndrome. I don't tend to buy into that. I don't think that. I think it's more of a case of the players maybe a little bit of complacency setting in. You seen it towards the back end of last season, didn't you? Wilder was kind of, he mentioned it in a few of his press conferences that that the players weren't playing to the standards that he expected. One of them performances being against our lot, they were completely flat and they looked like they're on the beach already. Have they carried that into this season, do you think? And it's kind of a bit of a reality check, we are in a battle and we aren't just going to get the expected top 10 finish that what people thought we were going to get. Or is second season syndrome genuinely a thing? I don't believe it is, but some do.
I think it's a thing. I think momentum, we've always said momentum is massive in football. And when you come up, that momentum can kind of carry you, can't it? It can get you through dark moments at times. It can get you points, momentum. But I don't worry about Sheffield United. As a neutral, I mean, it's very easy to say when I don't have any emotional investment in Sheffield United. But as an onlooker, I trust Chris Wilder. I don't think Sheffield United will go down in the Wilder. And quite frankly, if they did go down, similar to Burnley with Dyche, I think they come straight back up within a year or two. I don't know. I don't worry about Sheffield United. Maybe, certainly in the long term, I think they'll be in and around the Premier League for a few years. They might drop out and have to come back, but I don't know. I still don't think they're going to go down. I think their performances have warranted a lot more than they've got. And in fact, I think the point they got against Fulham was ironically probably one of their worst performances of the season. And they still got a point, but yet they seem to play really well elsewhere and they get a bit shortchanged. It doesn't look good, obviously losing your first 6 games, but no, I'm not overly concerned about Sheffield United yet. I still think they'll turn it around.
I think they've got a very good championship squad, haven't they? And I think, like you say, if they went down, I think they'd be more than capable of coming back up again. And I think it's a very good championship squad that was at last season overachieving and played a system that was very unpredictable and it worked well and it suited them. And teams couldn't quite work them out, could they? Very very odd system that they used at Sheffield United. Personally, if I was a Sheffield United fan, and I know in the current times of everything that's going on, it's easy for me to say this, but I think as a Sheffield United fan, you've stayed up. You stayed up convincingly. You've had a cracking season. Just missed out on Europa League, in fact, which would have been a cracking season for them. I'd have liked to have seen them spend a bit more money, and if they're going to spend some money, bring in players of real quality. I think the signings that they've made, I'm trying to think of one of them was.
They've brought in the pair from Derby, Jaden Bogle and Max Lowe, pair of fullbacks, championship players. Ethan Ampadu's came in on loan. Obviously, they lost Henderson, went back to Man United. That was a big blow because he was a big feature in them, not only getting out of the championship but having a good season last year in the Prem. He's rotting on Manchester United's bench, and they brought in Ramsdale from Bournemouth, and obviously Rhian Brewster's came in.
Yeah, it's not signings that for me that scream out that you're trying to improve on a was it 9
not
for
a lot of Premier League experience in there, is there? And when things aren't going well, you need a bit of that, but they don't seem to have that.
No. So taking the trip down south, then Southampton v Everton. Obviously, Everton's first loss of the season. The red card from Luca Dean. A lot of people saying it was harsh. I know today he's had his match ban been reduced down just to the 1 game now instead of the 3. I think we spoke about the Kamara one earlier, didn't we? With Fulham, and we said how it was kind of lazy and there was no real intent. I think this was similar, weren't it? Similar sort of challenge,
Well,
but
I
you got to
think
be consistent.
yeah, I think certainly for Walker Peters, who it happened to, it's gonna hurt. Like that's gonna seriously hurt having someone stand on the back of your leg like that and almost like drag your leg with their leg. Like it's gonna be extremely painful for Walker Peters, and it's dangerous in that respect. Is it reckless? I mean, he's trying to run back, isn't he? And he's cut across the front of him. It's one of them. It's unfortunate. There's no malice intended. I know Ancelotti feels that because of what happened last week with Liverpool, with obviously the Pickford challenge and Richarlison red card, that some people may have now a vision of his Everton team being a bit dirty, and he thinks that may have played a part in the red card. I think it's so difficult. It is so difficult. I mean, you got to use common sense. Like you said, it's all right saying if the studs are up like that, it's a straight red card, but you got to look at the intent and you got to look at the situation as a whole. Because these are people, athletes running extremely quick, extremely in relatively a quite tight space. They're going to collide. The feet are going to get tangled. Thankfully the game was already over and it didn't change the game. So I think that would have been a shame for the game to have swung on that decision. Thankfully, Everton were only 2-0 down and looking out of it, to be fair. But I think, reduced it down to one game is a good move. It looks nasty, but just because it looks nasty doesn't necessarily mean it should be a red card.
No, I don't think there was any real intent. I
No.
think it was more of a case of the legs getting tangled, and like
Yeah,
you
oh, yeah.
say,
Yeah.
it looked worse than what it really was. So yeah, I think the decision to reduce it to the one game was probably a good decision. Obviously, Ings getting 2 assists, becoming provider. Do you think Ings could fit into the England squad, as in, playing with Harry Kane? Because we've seen Harry Kane's obviously he started to assist as much as scoring. He's become a provider as well. I know Ings isn't renowned for his assists, but could they work together in the England setup?
Yes, I believe they could. I think Ings is certainly in the squad. Whether he's in the starting 11, I don't know. I mean, Southgate seems to be pretty obsessed with this front three sort of thing, and at the moment, you'd have to say his chosen front three are probably Sterling, Kane, and Sancho. Now, you know my opinion on Sancho. I've said it before. I'm not saying he's not got potential. I just don't think he's at the level people think he's at. People think he's like seriously like a world class player. I don't think he's at that level yet, and I think maybe stick Danny Ings out there. Give him a go. I don't know. Like I said, he's very crafty, very clever player, very cute player, very good on the ball. Like I said, he has an eye not only to score goals but to set players up. And for me, he's more established than Jadon Sancho, and I'd back him to have a bigger impact in a bigger game than Jadon Sancho. Not saying that Jadon Sancho won't want to be a better player than Danny Ings, but it's just all this hype around Sancho, and I don't watch a lot of the Bundesliga, but I know Dortmund do fly forward and do dominate games. But when I've seen him play for England, Sancho, he doesn't look like anything special.
No. Do you think England could be criminal of making the same mistake twice? Because I know a lot of people are going to go, "Oh, you're talking about one of your own again," and rightly so. Jamie Vardy, prolific, one of the best English strikers to play in the Premier League, whether people agree with me or not. He is, and that's a fact. He never really got a fair crack because he was always second fiddle to Harry Kane, and then Rashford came through, and he was a little bit of the poster boy. And Vardy always seemed to be second fiddle. He consistently hit 20 goals a season, and it still is doing. And people are now crying out for him to come out of retirement. Well, my response to that is, well, you should have been grateful for what you got when you got it. Could we be criminal of making that mistake twice with Ings?
Oh, well, Danny Ings only hit 20 goals in the Premier League last season, hasn't he? I know he's had some injury issues. It's just a system we play, isn't it? We traditionally only play with the one up front, and you can't. Similar at Spurs. Harry Kane will not be dislodged from that position. Do we adapt? You said you got Calvert-Lewin, you got Danny Ings, two strikers in good form. I think it's hard when you're playing the formation we play. I mean, with the Vardy situation, it was a bit infuriating. He'd come on and he'd stick him on the wing, and as a Leicester fan, you can count the amount of times we've seen Vardy play on the wing on one hand because it just doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen, and they did waste Vardy. They massively wasted Jamie Vardy. Not saying that I can't. To be fair, I can't think of a game for England where having Vardy on would have made a massive difference. But my vision of Jamie Vardy would have been, you playing in a knockout game. I don't know, in Euro 2016 against France or Spain. They're dominating the ball. Who do you want on the halfway line ready to go as soon as you win it back? Who do you want hassling the defenders? You want Vardy because he's the best in the business at it. He still is. So
Mm.
yeah, I don't. It's a tough one because Harry. I'm not going to sit here and state Harry Kane. Harry Kane is generally is world class, and if you are going to play one up front, then you can only really play Kane. But do
Yeah,
I? I don't. I like Rashford. I like Sterling. I don't know. It's very difficult. I think I'm not honestly. It's very hard to say because it's just a system England play, and I can't see England ever going two up unless we're in a
no.
game and we were, really, really chasing it. But no, I do think Danny Ings certainly should be a player who's in the England squad. 100% would be on my plane to the Euros in the summer.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before we move on, Everton's bubble. I've got a good friend of mine who may be listening to this, and I work with him, and I sent him a nice photo of a bubble bursting. I was taking the Mickey, by the way, but have Everton's bubble burst, or is that a little bit of a premature? Is this a little bit
Um,
of, is this a one-off?
well, I mentioned I think before that they won. Was it 4 out of 4? I think it was 4 out of 4. But the win at Palace was very fortunate. Uh, they're a good team. They are a good team. But will they win the league? No. Will their bubble burst to the point now where they fall off a cliff? No. But will they be a top 8 side? Yeah, I think they will be. So I think their form going forward will be resemble that of a top 8 side, if that makes sense. I don't think they're gonna. The bubble may have burst in the sense of they're not going to be title challengers like some people may have thought prematurely, but I think they're still a top 8 side. They could even push for the top 6 if they keep everyone fit. I mean, God knows what the table's going to be at the end of the season. Even top 4 if things go their way. They're more than capable, but so I don't think the bubble will burst to the point where they'll fall off a cliff. I think certainly maybe a bit more reality will set in though.
No, fair assessment. Very fair assessment. Obviously, moving on. Wolves v Newcastle. It was kind of a game of poor quality, wasn't it? But again, Wolves didn't. I think they had 20 shots in total, but only hit the target 3 times. A bit of inconsistency creeping in with Wolves now, aren't they? Games where you're expecting them to kind of, go and cruise and pick up a relatively straightforward win, and they, dropping points to Newcastle at home. It's. I think as a Wolves fan, you can't be happy with that, surely.
They certainly don't seem like they're moving forward. Put it that way. I think losing Doherty and Jota, two players who were with them for a few years, is obviously quite a big loss for them. I know they've bought in Semedo and replaced him, obviously with replaced Doherty with him, but yeah, they're sort of underwhelming a bit. Them aren't they, Wolves? You would have thought this season with no European commitments, they'd really have an assault on the top 6, but it just doesn't seem to be the case, and it seems strange. Obviously, Jimenez is always good for a goal, very good striker, but I don't know. It's another cheap goal from a set piece, not finishing teams off. Is Penance as effective as Jota? Maybe not. Traore, he can on his days unplayable, but his days are getting fewer and far between. Yeah, I don't know. Wolves. I think they'll still be a top 10 side comfortably. Whether it's just where they come, whether they become top 8 or push for top 6. But like I said, at the moment they look a bit flatter into the season, a bit flat, a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, obviously the 2 wins they've picked up this season have been against Fulham and Leeds, but they've lost to obviously Man City. They've lost to West Ham,
I think they beat
and
Sheffield United as well, didn't they? On the opening day.
yes, they did. Yeah, they beat Sheffield United. Yeah, sorry, right. Yeah, that's right. They beat Sheffield United on the opening day. So the 3 teams that they've beaten, apart from Leeds, have been expected. But they've dropped points to West Ham. They've dropped points to Man City, which again would have been expected. But then they've dropped points to Newcastle. A lot of inconsistency in there, and I suppose I think you could argue that's probably the same throughout the Premier League. There's a lot of inconsistency in all sides, but I expected Wolves to really push on. I know it's early doors, but yeah, it was a bit of a game. It won't be one remembered, and it ain't going to be one that's going to make the back page of the newspaper. Let's put it that way. As for Newcastle, obviously picking up points slowly. I don't think they're playing great football. I don't think the fans are happy. The fans are never happy, are they? Really, to be honest with you. But so far this season, they've not looked too bad, have they?
I think they'll be safe. They'll be fine, but they won't pull up any trees. I think 10th to 14th. I think they'll pull up the odd result here and there. They'll go away from home and get a good point. Now and then they'll battle and get grind out a point. They'll beat some teams at home, and I just think they'll finish about 10th to 14th. I don't think there's too much to say about Newcastle. I mean, they just got to go into each week and try and win each game. I don't think there's any longer. They certainly aren't aiming for anything. Maybe in the cups they can try and get a bit of success, but certainly domestically they just 10 to 14th for me, just run of the mill.
Yeah, they've picked up some. I'm just looking at the results, and they've picked up some fairly good results. They beat West Ham, obviously, on the opening day, 2-0. They obviously they lost to Brighton, which was a little bit of a shock. But then they got a draw at Tottenham, 1-1. Again, was probably
Fortunate.
lucky, very
Yeah.
fortunate. But then they beat Burnley. Okay, they lost to United, and then they drew to Wolves. So again, they're a little bit inconsistent and all, aren't they? So they're not kind of. I know they're sat 14th at the moment, but I think it's a position they'll probably be happy with, and they're not a million miles away from breaking into that top 10. And whether you like him or you don't, Steve Bruce is doing no better of a job than Rafa Benitez. Whether Newcastle fans would agree.
Oh no, no. Steve Bruce is probably getting as much out of the players as he can get. I think that's always been agreed.
Yeah, no, I agree. So moving on, obviously it's our lot away to Arsenal, and a bit of a nerve-wracking one as a Leicester fan, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. I wasn't a fan of the system or the lineup or any kind of tactical decisions that Brendan made at the start of that game, and I suppose that's why I was sat on my sofa watching it on the box, and Brendan was stood at the dugout because a Brendan masterclass was about to unfold. What was
Well, it was. It's never. I mean, it's always hindsight, isn't it? But it's never enjoyable when you see a team of Arsenal's quality coming at you wave after wave. I mean, it's not good to watch, and it's frustrating every time you try and get out, and it just comes back, and it's wave after wave. I mean, in the short term, in the moment, it's very frustrating, and you're thinking, "Come on, get out! They're going to score." Every time they went forward, you thought, "Are they going to score this time? Are they going to score this time?" Thankfully, we did defend quite well, and eventually our chance did come, and we took it. And then I didn't enjoy the game until the final whistle went, because it was hard to watch as Leicester fans. It was constantly under pressure. Second half, we adapted better. Vardy came on, Barnes moved on to the wing. Arsenal ran out of ideas. But it's all right saying masterclass after the game, fair enough. But during the game, it's very difficult to watch your team just be under the cosh for the large majority.
Yeah, I know.
When you know they're capable of doing much more as well.
Yeah, I think that was the only frustrating thing, weren't it? I know we've come away with a win, so we shouldn't sit here and complain too much, but we are capable of going to Arsenal and being on the front foot, and I think we've got the ability to do so. And okay, at the moment, the squad's very thin. We've got Europa League to contend with, so I can understand why he's probably been a little bit cautious. Um, but yeah, up until Vardy came on, obviously Maddison playing as a false nine, it was very much let's sit back and try and defend as much as we can and hope something comes. And I think when Vardy came on, and Vardy's so important to the way that Leicester operate and the way that we play in our old system. But once he come on, we just seem to. I don't know how one player can have such an impact. We went from having none of the ball to being peppered to having all of the ball, controlling the game, and starting to look like we were going to create chances. And then obviously, that fantastic ball from Yuri over to Under, and he squared it to Vardy, and it's a 1-0 smash and grab. But as for Arsenal, I know they had a lot of the ball, and as a Leicester fan, it felt like we were well under the cosh for the best part of the game, and we were. But I was surprised to see that they only had 4 shots at the end of the game.
Mm.
So whilst they had a lot of the ball and they put us under a lot of pressure, they never really troubled Casper. And I think I can only remember Casper making one save, and that was obviously from Bellerin at the back post. So, yeah, like I say, in hindsight, was it a masterclass? I'm not so sure. I think you've got to get an element of luck when you set up like that. I think I heard someone say, 9 times out of 10.
Arsenal did score from that corner, didn't they, as well?
Yeah, I was just about to touch on that. What was your thoughts? Obviously, Xhaka's kind of in Casper's eye. I'm not. I think it was harsh, personally. I think we were lucky to get away with it.
Yeah, we were lucky. I was more frustrated from the fact that set pieces and balls into the box have been our Achilles heel for a while now, and we don't seem to address it. So I was more fuming about that. I mean, if the goal would have stood, I would have had no complaints about it from that point of view. If it goes against you, you don't obviously you feel hard done by. If it goes for you, obviously you take it. Were they unfortunate? Yes. Can I see why it was given? Yes, of course I can. But yeah, it was harsh.
Yeah, very harsh. And I think as for Arsenal, again, inconsistency. It just seems to be the set trend throughout the Premier League. No one can kind of get a run of games where they're winning consistently, and teams are dropping points where you wouldn't expect them to drop points, as included.
I think from an Arsenal point of view, it's always frustrating after a game when you turn around and you look at it and think, fucking hell, they've done a job on us there. I think no fan likes that when you come away from the game or you watch the game and then you turn around and you think to yourself, they've just done us there. They've done a job on us there. And I think that's the feeling that we did to Arsenal.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. And first win at Arsenal since 1973 was
Yeah,
it? I think.
yeah.
So yeah, a cracking result for our lot. But again, frustration as a Leicester fan. We dropped points to West Ham and Aston Villa, but we beat Man City and Arsenal. It is a crazy
Like I
old
said, that's just a
season.
symptom of the Premier League at the moment, isn't it? Not just us.
Yeah. What did you think to Party, the new bloke at Arsenal?
I thought it was pretty shit. I mean, if it's hard to go too hard on him since his first Premier League debut, wasn't it? I saw in the build-up some Arsenal fans were raving about him. So he had a good game in the Europa League against Rapid Vienna. Thankfully for us, we aren't Rapid Vienna. We are far superior to Rapid Vienna. And yeah, he looks out of his depth at times. He looked a bit clueless, to be fair. But obviously, he came from Atletico Madrid. He's a very good player because you don't play for Atletico Madrid in a Simeone team if you're not. So I think he'll come good. But I think he didn't. That wasn't the homecoming debut he was probably hoping for. So no, he wasn't very good. But then again, a lot of Arsenal's midfield wasn't very good on the night. So
I think Arsenal fans have got to be they've got to be patient because a player like Partey is not going to be the saviour. He's coming in as a holding midfielder. He's coming in to steady the ship in the midfield and to give them that little bit of grit and fight in the middle of the park that they've lacked since Vieira left, really.
mm-hmm.
But he's not the player that's going to turn them around. And I think he's slowly building Arteta. I think going forward, they've got the players capable. The midfield's slowly starting to take shape, but defensively they are still very vulnerable. Mustafi I know it's come out that Mustafi's refusing to sign a contract and he's going to leave at the end of the season, but he didn't look interested, did he?
No.
Look at it. You look at our goal. He's walking. He's not even bothering to track Vardy.
It's Xhaka, walking. Isn't it? Xhaka breaking his neck to try and get back, but no, Mustafi very poor, very poor.
Overall, like I say, cracking result for Leicester. Brendan's got one over on Arteta and claimed a potential masterclass. But yeah, I hope we don't set up like that much more for the rest of the season. Let's put it that way. Obviously, moving on to the last two games, and Brighton West Brom's one of them. And Brighton again, just I don't know where to start with them. I really don't. They play such good football, create chance after chance, but they just don't score. And if that carries on, I'm sorry, but they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, you got to take your chances. They do play good football. They have some good young players, but yeah, they're flat into the sieve at the moment. You watch them play and you think, how this team not in the top half of the table? But then you realise their chance conversion rate is absolutely horrendous. And I think that's it for Brighton. I think West Brom, go with 5 at the back, and they're just happy. They're just happy for the point. I'm pretty sure West Brom, if they can nick something else, it's a bonus. But Brighton, good football, no cutting edge. I think that's as much as you can say about that game, really.
Yeah, no, you're right. And, West Brom, the new guy, I think it was Grant, got the equaliser. But yeah, Brighton, they just, obviously, West Brom yet to get a win. And I don't rate them at all, West Brom. But Brighton, they just frustrate me. And I'm not even a Brighton fan, but you watch them play and they play such good football. And it's great to watch. But at the end of the day, it's the result that matters, and they don't seem to be picking up them results. And each game that goes by now, you give them the benefit of the doubt. They lost to Chelsea, they deserve to win. They lost to United, they deserve to get at least a point out of that. But then when they're losing to the likes of West Brom, drawing to the likes of West Brom, and and dropping points elsewhere against the smaller or lesser sides of the Premier League, you just think to yourself, how much can you possibly take? When does I know we said this? I said this last week, and you said you don't want to completely go back to the drawing board, but surely there comes a point where you've got to start questioning it because something somewhere is not working. Because this was a regular trend last season, it's starting again this season. If they carry on the way they're going, they're going to be in a relegation dogfight, which looking at the games and the way they're playing, they shouldn't be down there. They've got the potential to be up in the top half.
No, I think they're far too good to go down. I wouldn't say hit the panic stations just yet. I just think they need to try and get a number 9 who can put the chances away. I think easier said than done. But no, I think Graham Potter. I think they're certainly. You compare the Brighton team now to how it was under Chris Hughton 2 years ago. It's massive improvement. So maybe it's a bit frustrating for Brighton at the moment. because they're not, making the most of the chances they have. But I think they're certainly still a club moving forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope so. I've got nothing against Brighton. Again, and like I say, I like the way they play. As a neutral, they're a great side to watch. But bloody hell, they're frustrating. So God only knows how Brighton fans feel. And moving on to the last game of the weekend, and there wasn't really much to shout about it. Obviously, Burnley at home to Spurs, and Mr. Dyche had already come out and said he was going to play a certain way to frustrate Spurs, and he very much nearly did, didn't he? Apart from Son getting the goal late on. Are those the type of games that Spurs need to win to give them a fair crack of the whip?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
is that
definitely.
is that a result that kind of says they will be in with a shout?
Well, yeah, it was a good result for Spurs. I think, like I said, it's the type of game. It's not the glamorous one, is it? It's not the hitting five past Southampton. It's not scintillating attacking football, but it's workmanlike, it's dogged, it's going away to Burnley on a cold Monday night and getting the job done, and that's a sign of champions. Not saying they're going to win the league because they won at Turf Moor, but it certainly bodes well.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's one of them where, like you say, there's what we said. Liverpool did the same against Sheffield United, and Spurs have done the same against Burnley. So, but as for Burnley, just before we sign off, again, they just it's worrying times for them, isn't it? It's worrying times for Burnley, and I know we said last week that they're going to be in trouble, and I still stand by it. This could be the season that they go back down.
Well, yeah, we've said for years Sean Dyche maximises, he squeezes every single ounce, out of those players, the squad he has with the resources he has. And this year it feels a bit like he's trying to get blood out of a stone. Just seems like if Burnley are going to drop, it will be this year. I'm convinced of that. But then again, if there's one man who can keep them up, it'll be Sean Dyche. And it's going to be so hard to predict the final Premier League table. God knows where anyone's going to end up. It's so hard to say. I think when they get me and Tarkowski back, it'll be a bit more solid. But yeah, I don't know. It's so inconsistent so early on. I ain't got a clue who's going to finish where.
They're not scoring enough, are they?
Oh no.
Burnley were always renowned for being robust, being able to score the scrappy goals, working hard and not conceding many, but they are conceding. They're not scoring, and they're definitely not very robust at the moment. So I think with all the uncertainty in the summer, the talk of Dash moving on, Tarkowski potentially wanting to leave and stuff, I think it's unsettled the apple cart a little bit, and I think that the kind of coming together and working as a team and being the typical solid Burnley side that they were, I think they've lost a little. I think they lost an inkling of that. So I think
Yeah,
that
well, Burnley's biggest strength was their togetherness, wasn't it? They weren't the greatest individuals, but as a collective, they pulled together in the same direction and would match you. You know,
yeah, uh,
and I think, yeah, like I said, I think things that have happened off the pitch maybe have tainted that a little bit, and I think that's what you're seeing at the moment.
yeah, no, I agree. Again, not much to say about that game really. Like I say, apart from Spurs getting a cracking result and potentially putting them in with a shout, Mourinho doing what he does best. But that pretty much rounds up the whole Premier League, and we've added a little bit of some side bits in there for you. By all means, join in with the comments. Who would you smash or pass, and who was your player that you looked up to as a neutral as a kid? Again, it would be interesting to hear from you all. But as for now, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Nathan, for being the ever-present co-host and the entertainer of this podcast.
No worries, thank you.
As always, don't forget to drop the video a like. Sorry, not the video. The audio. To thinking I'm on YouTube. Don't forget to drop it a like and review and join in with the comments and help this podcast grow. There'll be plenty more to come from us. But as for now, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, take it easy.